You know, deep in the book of Revelation, there's this one verse that is somehow both a terrifying sentence of doom and an absolutely breathtaking offer of grace. So, how can a single sentence hold two completely opposite meanings? Well, that's the paradox we're going to dive into right now.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the way most people have always read this verse, as a clear-cut declaration of judgment. Then, just when we think we have it figured out, we're going to flip that completely on its head and explore a really surprising interpretation of grace. And finally, we'll get into how these two views can even exist at the same time, and, why any of this really matters.
Okay, here it is. Because they poured out the blood of saints and prophets, you have given them blood to drink. They are worthy. I mean, wow. The language is just brutal, right? It sounds like this perfect, almost poetic form of justice. So let's really dig in and see why this reading seems so, well, so cut and dry. All right. To really get a grip on this judgment view, you've got to go back to the original Greek. As is so often the case, the clues are all in the words themselves. When you break down the Greek, it's honestly like reading a legal brief from a cosmic courtroom. First up, you've got exesechan haima. They poured out blood. So that's the crime. Check. Then comes the punishment. Dedokas haima pi'in. You have given them blood to drink. And the justification for it all? Well, that's axioi isin. They are worthy. It's a perfect, totally closed loop of crime and consequence. And this idea has a name, It's a classic case of what's called measure for measure justice. The punishment isn't just about inflicting pain. There's a kind of chilling poetry to it. You shed blood, you drink blood. It's a perfect, stark mirror image of the crime itself. And listen, this isn't some one-off idea that just pops up here. The Bible is full of these kinds of warnings about shedding innocent blood. You see it elsewhere in Revelation, and you can trace it all the way back to the words of Jesus himself. You see this pattern again and again. It's a really consistent theme. So you put it all together, right? You've got the grammar, you've got the legal principle, the wider biblical context, and the conclusion seems pretty inescapable. This is a very straightforward declaration of divine justice. Case closed, right? Well, not so fast. What if we've been reading the most important words in this verse all wrong? What if those key phrases, blood to drink and they are worthy, could mean something else entirely, something radically different? Okay, so take a deep breath. We're about to look at this very same verse through a totally different lens, the lens of grace, with the cross sitting right at the center of it all. Okay, remember that phrase, you have given them blood to drink? In the justice view, that's the curse. It's the punishment. But the grace view, man, it asks a mind-blowing question. What if this isn't the blood of punishment at all? What if it's the blood of Jesus? The very same blood that the Gospel of John calls a gift, a true drink, that's offered even to his enemies. And if that wasn't enough, here's the part that really turns everything upside down. The phrase, they are worthy. Under the justice view, it's about being worthy of punishment. But from this grace perspective, it means they are worthy of being saved. That even the murderers, even the persecutors, are seen as precious enough for Jesus to redeem. And really, this whole interpretation hinges on what Jesus himself said from the cross. Father, forgive them. It's maybe the ultimate expression of this absolutely radical idea that God's final word, even in response to the worst things we can do, isn't payback. It's this relentless, unstoppable offer of redemption. Okay, so let's just pause here for a second. How on earth can one single verse mean two totally opposite things? A curse and a gift? Punishment and redemption? Well, it turns out it all comes down to the lens you're looking through. It really is all about where you start. If you put on the justice lens, you're focused on law, accountability, and consequence. It makes perfect sense. But if you swap that out for the grace lens, your starting point is the cross. And you read everything, even a verse about judgment, through this filter of God's radical mercy. So you see, same text, but two totally different starting points. And that leads to two completely different stories. You might be thinking, okay, that's interesting, but why have we spent all this time on just one verse from Revelation? Well, it's because this little paradox, it actually pulls back the curtain on something huge about how we read and understand, well, pretty much anything. So here's the real takeaway. The framework, the lens we bring to what we read, is just as powerful as the words on the page themselves. Our beliefs about things like justice and mercy, they don't just help us understand,
they actively shape the meaning we find. And that leaves us with this one big, fascinating question to chew on. Is a text like this a window showing us a single fixed truth out there? Or is it more like a mirror, reflecting back at us our own deepest convictions about what justice and mercy are really all about? Something to really think about.